Hello and welcome to FeVR Dreams podcast episode 16. This is season 3, episode 3. I'm your host, Scorm78. Together with me is my co-host, Crindash. And we have a special guest that is from LIV again, Stefan, also known as ReLIV. So welcome in. Hello, Ru. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellently, thank you. I'm enjoying my Easter Sunday. Happy Egg Day, everybody.
It's Easter, right on. And yeah, we have had Ru already on the cast a few episodes ago where we were talking about all things LIV. And I remember back then, Ru stated that they haven't flexed yet. So we will now today talk about if the flexing has happening, if it's going to happen, and what's the next flex. Before we do that, though, let's start with the casual start and let's talk about games. Let's talk about games that have you been playing in the recent weeks. Maybe new stuff, maybe old stuff. Crin, what have you been playing?
Oh, geez. I've really been getting hard into the roguelites and roguelikes again. Lots of Binding of Isaac and Noita.
Maybe we should shortly
VR.
talk about what a roguelike is. Because for me, I learned it the hard way. But
Really? I mean, that's
maybe some people don't know. Especially there's a difference.
It's basically the encompassing gestalt of the roguelike, though, as you learn it the hard way.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Just explained it.
That was the joke about it.
Yeah. For those who don't know, the genre of roguelike and roguelite, they're basically there to make you suffer. I think the core premise comes from old school coin-op arcade games, where these games were literally designed to kill you as quickly and efficiently as possible to get you to feed more quarters to the machine. Many of us grew up with video games punishing us like this, and so we are used to playing games like this and kind of want them to abuse us in that way. It's a messed up relationship with your games, to be perfectly honest. They're fun.
Yeah, and then there's the roguelike genre and the roguelite genre,
Right.
which is not that
Right.
hard.
And don't ask me to split the hairs, but right. I mean, that's basically the differences. Okay.
I think that a roguelike is something that comes with a significant amount of investment on any particular run. A roguelite is meant to be something that, like, when you fail, you just walk away from the game, and it's like no big deal whatsoever. A roguelike is like time scale. I think the difference is time scale. Like a roguelike is something you could spend many, many days on a single run. Roguelite is more something where you sit down for a single play session, and if you get killed in the first 20 minutes, you're just like, yeah, whatever, I'll start a new run. And then if you get killed in 40 minutes, you're like, oh, I've had my fill. And then you go off and make a tea.
It's interesting, though, because some of these games are really splitting those hairs, too, like Noita. Noita blows my mind endlessly. It has since it first hit early access. They've been doing crazy stuff with it. And on the surface of the game, the only thing that carries over from game to game is, oh, you might have opened up a new spell by finding it out there, and it'll show up more often. But until you dig into it and you realize there's so much more going on, there's 7 biomes, you go kill the boss, you're done as far as you know. But if you're crazy and manic about your exploration, it's like you said, it could turn into an hours-long investment for one run.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway,
can you save in Noita so you could pick it off later? Okay, so it's a real.
You can tech, if you're not
thingy.
doing the daily, you can technically step away from it and come back and hit continue. Right.
Okay.
But the game isn't really designed with the idea of continuing in mind. That's just, okay, I need to take a breather. It's not a save point. If you die, you still lose everything. Everything. And the game doesn't even hint at the depth that's there until you find some things. Like, there are some achievements outside the game now finally giving away the game, but early on,
Okay.
they're rude. So anyway, how about you, Corbin? What are you playing these days?
I'm still on my run on the first playthrough of Cyberpunk, which I'm still continuing. So last week we had a bar tour because we are close to the finish, I guess. Somebody mentioned this will initiate the final mission. But I want to do all the side quests that are in there first, because I have a problem with those games where when you finish the main mission, the world becomes like hollow. So I cannot continue those games, even though there is still stuff to do. For me, those games are then finished, because I think only the main mission does really fundamentally have the ability to change the world. So there are events that make the game change over your progression. But after that's done, everything you do, it will not change fundamentally the game anymore. So I have to finish all the side quests first before I can finish the main quest, because after finishing the main quest, I wouldn't be able to come back. And that's why
You're spending a lot of time beating on brats, is what you're saying.
That's finished.
Okay.
And last week we've even done a little bar tour. So we went to all single bars that are there and took a drink. And where it was possible, we danced and went to the next bar. So that was a lot of fun.
That's very British of you.
Yeah, even though I'm not even... I've never done that there. But yeah, it's...
I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's the main game I've been playing. I've started to play a new space game, which is Starlink, Battle for Atlas. If you remember the Toys to Life games, where games were coming with toys. And in Starlink Battle for Atlas, I think it was initially released for the Nintendo Switch, or for consoles at least. And the Nintendo Switch did have a special side mission lane, where Star Fox was included into the game. And Star Fox is a name in the Nintendo world. They had 2 games, I think, Star Fox 1 and 2, and the second one was only released with the Nintendo SNES Mini or the NES Mini, I think, even. It wasn't available before. So Star Fox is in the game, and they have the figurines, the characters as little figurines, as well as ships. Those ships are detachable. You can remove their wings, you can remove weapons, and you buy them as physical toys. And then you have a controller where you can put on the Joy-Cons and put those starships on. And every time you switch that, it would reflect your ship loadout in the game. So you can switch the weapons, you can switch the wings, you can cascade the wings, you can make weird combinations of that, and you would have that in the game, and that's kind of fun. So I started to play that though on PC now. Yeah.
Huh. So wait, how do you get the physical objects for it then? Was this meant for the Switch, and you've just got like
the
NFC based cards or something that you tap on the controller, or?
For the Nintendo Switch, when you buy it, you get a special controller. There you can put on the game. It has like little USB
so it's kind of like the
Starlanders
stuff, and
I don't know Starlander. Maybe it's the same. I have no idea. But they have these little USB connector-like thingies where you plug in each thing to the other side, and with that they recognize what is attached. And you have that. It's available for PlayStation, for Xbox, and for Nintendo Switch. I have not tried that on the PC with an Xbox controller because I only bought the Nintendo Switch version. And the bad thing about that is I'm a fan of space games. I like space games and I like space toys. So when you buy the Nintendo Switch version, you get this cool ship from Star Fox. But you don't get the ship from the initial character if you don't buy the Nintendo Switch version. Which the ship that you get as a starter ship for the Xbox and the PlayStation version, you don't get that. And as my sister has a PlayStation, I was buying the PlayStation version as well. So I had that spaceship just to get it. I mean, it could probably work with the Xbox version where there's like a clamp you put onto the Xbox controller, and then you have this holding piece where you can put on the starship then. And then you hold the controller and have the starship on top of it. It's a little bit weird, but cool for me and my little son. We are having fun when we play with that.
Yeah, that's really cute.
But I started to play it on PC. Nevertheless, when I switch those loadouts on the screen on PC, I do have the toys here, and I'm doing the same thing and put it next to the camera, at least. That's
fun.
And the other space game I came just recently back into is No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky got a big update. the Outlaws update. And with it came a new community expedition. And those expeditions are really great. They add kind of, they lead you into the game, through the game, and give you a great introduction. So when you start the new campaign, you have to start a new save. You start from scratch. You start on a planet, and then you have to fulfill several milestones to complete one phase, and there are 5 phases. And these milestones lead you through different aspects of the game. For example, base building or crafting stuff. For exploration, you have to find several kinds of stars. So there are yellow stars, red stars, green stars, and you cannot go there from the beginning. So these expeditions, it's the 6th now, the 6th, and they introduce you into the game and tell you what to do to achieve certain aspects. It's not covering all of it because it's focusing on more or less one aspect that has been newly introduced or so. But with the Outlaws update and the new expedition, it's called the Blighted. I don't know what it means yet. I've only completed the first 2 phases, so I will probably have to learn what that's all about. But they introduced new ships, and those ships look so cool. If you remember the one episode of Deep Space Nine where Benjamin Sisko is going with one of the old ships from Earth to the next star or so, and using these solar wings. If you remember that episode, those kinds of ships are now in No Man's Sky. So you go into the ship, you lift off, and then these solar panels kind of unfold. And that's so cool. That looks so cool. I don't have one of those ships yet. You have to buy it from the pirates. But that's so cool.
Have they actually like simulated solar winds, or is it just like another propulsion system that looks super fancy?
That's a good question.
I think the second, but as I said, I don't own one of these ships yet. I've only seen them in trailers and other people flying with them. so I can't tell from my own experience yet.
That is so cool.
That's awesome.
And that's a good like segue to VR, because No Man's Sky does have a great VR port as well, which I tried recently with the last expedition. And No Man's Sky, at least on desktop, it does have DLSS support. So DLSS is the deep learning supersampling technology from NVIDIA. I think we've mentioned that a few times, but let me recap that real quick. So you want to play the game in 4K, but your PC is not capable of rendering it in native 4K. So you let the game render in a lower resolution, for example, 1080p. And DLSS is taking care of upscaling that again, but in a good way. So it looks sharp again, but you are still rendering the game in 1080p, which saves a lot of resources. So if you're struggling, even on lower end cards, if you have an RTX card and you can use DLSS, it might help with performance. And the interesting thing is, on desktop, it offers you DLSS. But in VR, they're using AMD's solution, which is FSR, the Fidelity FX Super Resolution, it's called. And it's more or less doing the same thing, but not with the RTX cores of NVIDIA. It's platform agnostic. You can have it on NVIDIA, you can have it on Intel, you can have it on AMD, of course. And in VR, they're using FSR. And that's pretty interesting. And that helps, at least for my system, with performance.
Awesome.
So yeah, there's been the segue to VR, and now we are going to hear what Ru has been playing, and if it has been in VR or not.
Well, I haven't been playing many VR games recently, and I do feel a little bit bad about that. I still have to finish off with Alex.
Oh my God, me too. Guys, me too.
I'm like on the last chapter. It's like the worst thing. I have a Half-Life tattoo on my arm. I feel like a traitor. But no, I've been playing lots of Vampire Survivors recently. That game is excellent. That is roguelike dopamine delivery system. It's just amazing. It's really fun, and it's received a whole ton of content updates recently. The game is still quite new. Highly recommend it. Give it a go. It's really cheap, and I guarantee you'll have a good time. I've been playing lots of that recently. I've also been replaying through A Dance of Fire and Ice on my phone. So this is a mobile game. This is the one tap rhythm game where you just basically have like orbs circling around and then you're tapping to the music. It sounds simple, but it gets very difficult, and it teaches you some really interesting like rhythmic stuff. It's really cool. But I recently changed to a new phone, so I lost my save, so I have to do the thing. But I'm enjoying it at 120 hertz, so that's nice.
Oh yeah.
And then I've also recently gotten back into Minecraft. So I was in on Minecraft back when it was like the alpha web version and all of this, right? I used to run a community server myself called Simply Minecraft with a close friend of mine. We had a really good time doing all of that. And then eventually I kind of just fell off. I started working, friend group split up, blah, 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 blah. And then I would go back to it every now and again and I'd play through like an hour and I'd be like, yeah, this is still Minecraft. And then I would just get bored and leave. Ever since the Cave and Cliffs update, though, the world generation is so much more interesting. It's actually worth your time to like go in and explore, because sometimes you'll be like stuck inside small cave systems and it's very claustrophobic, but then it will like open up into just a ginormous cavern. It's just
forever.
It's awesome.
Is that in
but I've been playing.
Is that update in the Java version available, or is that the? Oh,
in fact, Java and Bedrock are very close together right now. It's a good time to be back in Minecraft. Very good time to be back. I've been playing with a mod pack too. It's just create mod and a couple of other vanilla-ish mods. And I've been building things like fully automated lava bucket farms and all sorts of shit. That game is like, it's for me, it's like engineering without programming. I love it. I love it. So I've been getting back into that. I've been really enjoying it. And then the other game is Potioncraft, which is like it's a very chill game where it's effectively like potion golf. You're an alchemist with a store. You have people who come in who want to buy potions. So let's say somebody comes in, they're just like, hey, my crops were attacked by weevils, and now my family has no way to make money this year. What do I do? And you're like, okay. And then so you go to your alchemist table and there's like a big map where all of these different potions are, and then you grind ingredients and put them into a cauldron, and then that will make your potion travel towards one of these like different actual potions that you can make. And so it's about combining these different ingredients to get you there efficiently so that you use your ingredients as little as possible. And so like you're effectively like making recipes for potions and exploring this map as you go, and there's like a whole bunch of stuff where you've got to make like an alchemy machine using complex potions that take a really long time to brew. But the entire thing is very chill and just very well done. Like when you're grinding herbs, like you can really hear like the grinding sound. You can see it like slowly break down. You drop it in, you stir your potion. It's
little
just
details.
It's in VR?
No, this is actually a flat screen game. The art style is phenomenal. It's all hand drawn. It looks like a medieval tapestry. Beautiful game. Highly recommend it. Seriously. Give it a go. Give it a go.
What was the name again?
Potioncraft.
And I guess the potions you have or the recipes you have to learn by your own by just tinkering around, testing around different combinations, and then learn from those. Ooh.
Yes,
that sounds time-consuming.
Some of them are really hard too. Like there's a necromancy potion that's like way off in the corner of the map, and it's like you've got to go a long way to get there. So like when somebody comes in, they want it. And then there's like a reputation system too. So if you help out bad people, you get bad reputation, but then more of those people come. It's a good game.
Damn it,
but yeah,
stop making poisons for people.
Oh yeah, Onion, at some point, you do kind of get like, you discover the map and you don't have to continuously refine everything. And there are optimal recipes for things. But like the fun is discovering these things for yourself, obviously. Same with any game.
If you haven't tried Noita yet, Rue, I highly recommend you give it a shot. Like without spoiling, without spoiling anything, man, just jump into it and start playing. If you poke at it long enough, I think your mind is going to be completely blown.
Oh yeah, I do need to jump in and give it a serious try. I jumped in originally to Noita because I heard that it was basically falling sand, but as a game.
Yes,
and that tickled all of the physics bits in my head, and I'm like, yes, give me a sim game that I can play. Actually, before we move on to main topics, do you remember Cortex Command? It's a side-scrolling RTS game that has like every pixel on the screen is physics, like Noita, It's quite old, actually. But that game is like an RTS where you are an AI brain controlling all of these drones that you can like buy and stuff. It's really good. Cortex Command is top notch.
Cortex Command.
And actually, Corbin, sorry, I'm going to jump around a little bit more here. I was going to make a recommendation to you for a space game. If you've ever looked at Dwarf Fortress and thought it was interesting, there is a game that I backed on Kickstarter called Starmancer. And it's effectively like it's a roguelite space game where you are an AI controlling a ship of like human clones, and pirates can come attack you and all sorts of cool stuff.
Which I have in my library because it does have a native Linux version. And I think I was backing it as well because it was advertised with the native Linux version. I got it in my library. I haven't played it yet, though. That's a shame. It's on the pile.
It's beautiful.
You want to guarantee that Corbin is going to back your Kickstarter? Make sure it's available on Linux.
It works pretty well, yes. Surprisingly well.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I bought it. It's the isometric view, and it's a space station building game, right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's quite challenging, but very, very fun. It has like sim vibes to it as well. It's like Dwarf Fortress, Sims, roguelite. It's really good.
Thanks for the recommendation, and thanks for kickstarting a game that has a Linux version. Going back to VR and Minecraft real quick. Have you played Minecraft in VR? Because I remember there is a VR mod for that. And that's working with the
Vivecraft, and what was the other one? It was the Rift one, wasn't it?
Vivecraft is the classic one. Well, there's actually 3 Minecraft VRs. There's the official one that Microsoft put out. There's Vivecraft, which is, I would say, the most like well-known, longest-lived version. And then there's the new one that actually runs natively on Quest, which is nuts.
Wow.
I haven't played that one, but I have played Vivecraft, and I think it's really good, but I would just never choose to play it because Minecraft is a game where I would spend hours clicking rocks. I don't want to be stood up doing that.
I have got to be honest, I tried to do a lot of Vivecraft. I tried. Freak VR was actually successful playing all of his Minecraft and Vivecraft, and I doff my hat to him because holy crap, every single time I started mining, like picking at stuff and turning around and looking for what you're next going to hit, it's a really fast way to get motion sickness. It really is.
I think also the graphics with its blocky view is a little bit different to other games where you have the detailed models, and I think if everything looks kind of the same and it's moving around, even though the turning is smooth, but the rest is kind of looking the same, I think that is also an additional factor to the motion sickness, I guess.
It doesn't help that Minecraft Java Edition is a very spiky game in terms of performance. So there's lots of hitches and lots of little things that when you think about it over time just make it less comfortable.
Well, and I mean, we're literally trying to CPU render this to our goggles, which is just, come on.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
Right on. So shall we, after talking about games, talking about... let's go to the FeVR community news real quick, because last time we had the cast, Beat Saber was updated. Update 121 came out, and it took a while until the mods have been updated. So one thing that happened is Anticheat, who's also working for LIV, if I remember correctly.
That's right.
He created the Song Request Manager mod initially. And Crane, who is a FeVR member, updated it. He took over a little bit of maintenance, and he updated it for the new version. And then a topic arose because it's depending on Chatcore. Chatcore, though, is apparently discontinued and it shouldn't be used anymore. So Crane updated it to interact with the WebSocket. With a WebSocket server that you can set up. He also distributed the commands, the actions, so which you can import for streamer.bot, and then have a WebSocket server running there and connect the Song Request Manager now to streamer.bot. We've also created a like very basic Node.js tool which you can run. You have to enter some credentials on your own in the config file, but then you can just run it, so you don't have to do with the to do the import on streamer.bot. It's both available. It has to be updated a little bit, but it's doing its job. And then you can connect it to your Twitch account, to your Twitch channel, and it's connecting to Song Request Manager, and you have that working. So we are bypassing the chat core for now, even though it's still available on GitHub. You can still download it. It's still working. But as it's discontinued for now, that's the solution. And the GitHub page for the Song Request Manager from Crane, I will post that here real quick in the Twitch chat. There you get all the details.
For those who are listening or watching the YouTube recording later, big issue boils down to the person who was originally working on chat core doesn't want it distributed in mod manager, mod assistant, whatever they're calling it now. So if you want to get this working, you are going to need to go visit the GitHub, or I don't know, get it from somebody if you're scared of GitHub for some reason.
It's still available. It's still working. It's just not officially announced anymore. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one of the modders, Eris, I think, in the modding community is working on a replacement called Catcore. But for now, I think what Corbin just talked about is your best way forward.
Yeah. Catcore? Is
yes.
that a typo?
I don't even know if that's officially announced anywhere yet. So I'm sorry if
I've read about that as well. And if you're
this
following,
sounds like some.
if you're following the Beat Saber modding Discord, it's mentioned somewhere that they're working on a replacement called Catcore, and I was like, is that a typo? No, it's not. It's really the official name.
No. It's called Catcore, and I actually I've played around with it myself actually, and I have to say that once you got it, it's going to be incredibly stable. It's very well made. So as soon as that's out, I suspect people may switch over to it if the streamer bot integration isn't more convenient, which for a lot of people it will be.
Whatever floats your boat, you have several options. It's open, so you can choose whatever you like. Right on. So that's yeah.
I don't know if this is true or not, but Onion just said that chatcore literally in French is catcore.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense then. Probably it's pronounced a little bit different in French. I don't know. Catcore? I don't know. I can't speak French natively. Alrighty.
What do you think? Freak VR can tell us.
Alrighty. So yeah, we have a guest from LIV. And last time we had a guest from LIV, we had a statement that was, we haven't even flexed yet. Rue, have you flexed by now?
We have flexed once. We have more flexes coming. That is my response.
That is a great response because we can pick up on that. What does that flex look like?
Well, flex number one, you see, this is where I very smoothly just like...
Can you make him bigger?
Oh, what's this?
What is this?
We have our first volumetric... Oh, I let go of it. We have our first volumetric replay of... Hello, by the way, I'm in there. Of Gorn.
I love this.
So this is a 3D recording of the game Gorn that I played in VR. And obviously you can see like my avatar there. And I've got it in like a little bubble. You can see my head's in it. But if I hold that up, you guys can see exactly what's going on. And this is, sorry for the shakiness. And effectively, you can view this in VR. In fact, you can see my VR headset's on the floor. This is actually running in my headset. I just have it next to me as a physical object. So this is, where is it? There it is. This is going to be the next like generation of where LIV goes towards. We think this is going to be something. Hello. So we think this will be where content creation heads towards, although we'll think it will be a complement to 2D video creation. We have a lot of plans this year involving this.
So exciting.
How do you call
I'm just
this?
gonna leave that there. We call it Volcap internally. We have a couple of other like cute names for like it as a product. We've got Live Moments, Live Bytes. I think those are the two that have been most popular, but we haven't figured out exactly how we're going to package it yet. It's going to be interesting, that's for sure. But yeah, like what you're seeing here is just kind of modded into Gorn. This uses the regular Live SDK. When we're ready to distribute this out to like the general public, this will be something that developers just put in as part of the regular Live SDK. And in our testing, it doesn't require any special setup. So we're hoping that this is going to be really like a very compatible way to get 3D actual VR recordings out of games. It's a completely new format. We have no idea how people are going to consume it yet. We're experimenting with things like bringing it to the web so you can view it in 3D in a browser. We also have some like ideas about like, let's say you send a message to a friend in VR and then they can view that message like as like a little hologram style thing.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of work to do.
Okay. All right. I have to ask the obvious first question here because it's you guys. Compositor integration with this feature. Is there any way I can throw my dancing picture in the middle of that?
100%. Like
Nice.
as you can like tell already, he grabs it again. As you can tell already, it's a real 3D object. It's actually intersecting my body as you'd expect. Obviously, I don't have a full green screen behind me, but if I did, it would look like any other live content. And we fully intend. In fact, the other video I have of this has a live avatar in there instead of the Gorn one. And we fully intend to have like 2D cameras composited into that environment too.
Very exciting.
In fact,
cool.
Mr. Life Producer just brought up a very interesting comment, which is a keyframeable camera inside of that. That is one of the things I would love to see. I'm going to get into some of the nitty-gritty details in a sec, I think, but one of the most useful things I think that this can have is like, let's say you're playing through a song in your favorite rhythm game and you want to choreograph a camera that captures you at the best moments. Well, the ability to see that scene in 3D of your performance and then plan a camera path around it and then play it again and have that be completely automated, totally on the table. Like if you've ever used Tilt Brush's camera controls, that's where we'll be taking our inspiration from. And you'll have like a scrubbable timeline where you can like go backwards and like preview it at that point and get like a 2D viewfinder of what it is exactly the camera will capture. So yeah, there's a lot of depth to this. Liv's biggest challenge this year is like not getting distracted by all the cool things we can do with it. We're going to try and make it useful first.
Okay, how does this work? Is this adding a new, an additional camera in the game? Or how is this added?
So this doesn't actually do anything more intensive than regular Live.
Yeah.
This is actually using the exact same rendering load. So, that video there, I'm recording that on a 1080 Ti on a 5-year-old gaming rig. And I'm still getting smooth gameplay in the headset. Obviously, Gorn isn't a terribly taxing game, but that'll give you an idea of it, right? It is just 2 cameras, but we capture depth information along with it. And that's what we use to reconstruct the depth out of the game. And this is a very compatible method for doing this. If you wanted to run this alongside regular Live at the same time, then you'd be looking at 3 cameras, which is 1 more than Live traditionally has. That will come with a performance hit. But yeah, the fact that we can like roll this out and it will effectively be compatible everywhere, I think is the really exciting thing that we've got.
Yeah,
this isn't something that you'll have to wait long for.
If it's integrated into the SDK, it will be just available, right? Will it be available for free when it's rolling out, or is it something you want to sell?
Ooh, I can say truthfully, we have not discussed gating this behind a payment. I don't know if we will charge for it, but we have not talked about that right now. We've talked about things like if you want to be able to store things online for convenience, because dealing with video files is an inconvenience, then yes, we'll charge for cloud services. I think that's a no-brainer. That's something that we'll just do.
Yeah.
But as for whether or not access to the thing will be gated, I suspect no. but that's
Interesting.
just where we are right now.
So on the technology, it sounded like you were implying that you've got the capability to run multiple compositors now
Yes,
with multiple cameras running at the same time.
exactly. In fact,
Nice.
actually, the part of the work that went into this is like the new version is leading into the new version of Live that will replace the existing compositor that we have. So, like that window that you get open and the UI that you get open on the desktop, we are working on replacing that for lots of good reasons. But there's a lot of cool things that comes with that too. One being Linux support.
Nice.
Two,
Corbin.
two being fully dynamic lighting support basically everywhere. In fact, I wish I'd prepared this video because I'd bring it up right now. But like we've been experimenting with sampling every camera available to us and then turning that into a real-time lighting environment that is then used to relight both a physical camera and a virtual avatar. In fact, we have maybe I should go dig it up because it would
Feel
be an
free.
amazing thing to show.
Feel free.
Okay,
Feel free.
I'll work on this in the background. But we even have things like real-time reflections working on a live avatar composited out of engine.
On. All right. That's pretty good.
Let's see. Is this going to be
Like, so before the stream, he was mentioning that they were working on injecting content back into the games, and this is exciting. So, getting the camera data back in there is much, much harder. I take it it's basically impossible to take the 2D cameras and stick them in there and make it look reasonably decent doing those reflections.
Not as impossible as you might think, I don't think. Okay, my Discord search is malfunctioning, so I'm gonna have to wait on getting that video. But it's not that impossible. Getting the output of Live onto the games window, not too difficult. We've now kind of established the pipeline for that. That's what this thing is. So that will be easy for us to add in the future. And I think that's something that we've got on our roadmap, probably for like the first half of the year, if not leading into the second half.
Oh, wow.
That's our hope, at least. But getting things like let's say you're using an avatar and you want to see that in first person as you play, that may still come with like a lot of asterisks. We can technically turn that on right now. We have it functional. But because it renders as a separate layer on top of the game using SteamVR for the overlay compositing, it kind of comes with a bit of a latency mismatch. And so we thought that was a bit distracting. But I think something that we've learned a lot over the last few years is that we should just like put these things out there, even if we don't think that they're up to our quality standards. I think some people will still find it compelling enough to use it.
Right. I
because
mean,
it would be...
yeah, it often happens that the best things come out of these brainstormed ideas, and if they are barely functional, I mean, 80% is often enough to make something out of that will evolve to something that is way beyond the 100% you've ever dreamed of, but because of other people bringing in their ideas. So that's a great approach.
MLP's got some interesting questions here. Is there going to be an upgrade to dump Model 4 to have that reflection data as a separate layer output, or direct NDI output for each separate layer?
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to answer that in multiple different ways. With the new compositor, the way that we'll be doing it is, at the very least, you will have the capability of breaking separate sources into separate windows, similar to how OBS projectors work. So if you want to plug in a bunch of capture cards to your PC and like have everything captured raw on a different piece of hardware so your PC isn't constrained, that will be very possible. As for NDI, direct output, that's something that we may not implement. The reason for that is that NDI is extremely performance heavy, and this is the big problem for us, it is extremely limited when it comes to commercial usage. And if we were a completely free utility, the completely open source, it might not be a problem for us. But we are a commercial entity, and therefore we kind of have to make this cost benefit. And all the things that NDI provides, like easy transport of textures and video sources between applications, is stuff that we've kind of put a lot of work into already. So we have our own tech that accomplishes the same thing. So it's more likely that we'll just implement it ourselves, or we'll just let you create windows out of different layers. As for reflection and lighting data, I think we will probably expose the raw information to be captured. If not, have a mode where you can like right-click LIV and then set it to record output itself. But the intermediary data format is kind of a different like coordinate space. It's not immediately a texture. It's something different. So it may be difficult for you to even use it if you had it. So we have work to do there, but we do want to be better about exposing different slices of what LIV has internally.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
just
I take it.
Nina mentioned in chat there is an open source alternative to NDI, which is called Teleport. And I just recently got pointed to that by BNO, who's also confirming it. And yeah, it seems to be a pretty nice replacement for NDI, especially for OBS at least, because NDI has to be installed like system-wide, while the Teleport is just a plugin. At least for OBS. I don't know if you can adapt that if you want to have that format. But as it's open source, you'll probably be able to create a source and then get the video somewhere else as well. Maybe that's an idea.
So there's some interesting things that I want to get into. So I have two things to talk about. These are on the list for this year. One is our Pathfinder API. I'm going to touch on this briefly now. Maybe we can get into it later. But theoretically, we're going to be making it possible for you to just create your own camera types and sources by inserting textures into our own API. So if somebody wanted to take the Teleport plugin and make it compatible with LIV, that would be actually very doable. Pathfinder will also... Pathfinder also is bidirectional, so it will expose those raw layers. Those projector windows that I was talking about LIV being able to have, where it exposes like the background and the alpha channel and all that, that is going to be done through Pathfinder. So if somebody else wants to make an endpoint for that takes it and pushes it into NDI or Teleport or whatever other format or transport that you want to do, you'll be able to do that.
Little bridge.
Exactly. And the thing that we've already created, but we haven't published, and I'm actually kind of making a mental note to publish this as a beta thing, but we actually already have an OBS plugin that allows you to use an OBS source scene as a camera input into LIV. So effectively, you can construct a scene, chuck a filter on it that is export to LIV, and then you can add an OBS camera in LIV, and then that becomes your camera layer.
You literally just knocked down every one of the questions I had queued up, man.
Hell yeah.
Flex number 2.
Yeah, no, seriously, that's exciting news to hear that you guys are building an API so you can expose that to the community. And very exciting that you have your own OBS plugin coming.
We actually have that working, and we had it working at the end of last year, but it fell through the cracks because we came into the new year and refocused and changed what we were doing. But I actually have it working. So yeah, sorry for not releasing that sooner because I could have.
Oh my God. You know what? As soon as you get that out there, I'm firing it up. So let's see that.
I know Eba will be very excited to see that put into practice because he's the guy that worked on that along with Ang. We get a testing role for LIV creatives. Absolutely. In fact, as of like 2 weeks ago, we started opening up. Sorry, I'm kind of just jumping into a question. But we started opening up a side server that is called Friends of Latveria. Latveria being the fictional land that Dr. Doom resides over and has power over. That's where all of that comes from. Friends of Latveria, where we have been inviting LIV creators in to help us test things like avatars on Quest and our first-person stabilizer. So we're probably going to lean very heavily into using that as a like direct feedback channel because obviously our public Discord is gigantic and it's hard to distill feedback at times.
Nice. Okay, so I've got a question that you may or may not have been expecting, but I have been waiting to see this again, and I've got to be honest, I'm a little disappointed that I haven't seen an April Fool's prank out of you guys as epic as the LIV accessories. So any movement in that world?
So first, I want to apologize that we haven't done any April Fools for a while. It's largely been because we haven't had something interesting to want to experiment with at the right time. So we've never really put focus or effort into doing it. That isn't to say that there hasn't been interest. People have brought up like bringing back the same thing and pushing it out again. And truthfully, I think we think that's a little bit uninteresting. We want to do something different if we're going to do something. That said, however, in reference to the specific April Fools that you're talking about, where we did like just put cosmetics on everybody that were like Twitch reactive and it was all exciting and everything, that is something that we want to do this year. So effectively, we just want to blow the gates wide open for customizing LIV. This is like where everything I've been talking about with the Pathfinder API kind of all comes together. It's also quite likely that Nate might not like me for mentioning this, but I'm doing it anyway, so come at me. We may have a streamer bot integration with Pathfinder to make interacting with it easy, but there's also other things that we plan to do. Things like if you want to make something that is Twitch reactive with LIV, so you can write some code in whatever language you want. Pathfinder is language agnostic, to like look at the list of Twitch messages that are currently in the session provided by LIV without any login or anything like that. And then you can do whatever you want with that. Or let's say, for example, we have Pulsoid integration. We're going to publish that information onto Pathfinder as well. So if you want to make your avatars like heart pulse along with your actual heart rate, you can do that. Or if you want to go Super Saiyan when you hit 175, you can do that. Those are the kinds of things we want to lean into. But obviously there's like multiple different parts of it, right? There's like actually being able to load models into LIV and textures and shaders, all of that. And then there's actually coding the stuff. And so that comes with documentation and all the supporting structures that we have to do. We are tooling up for that. That is exactly what we want to be leaning heavily into this year. By the end of the year, I want to see people making plugins for LIV that kind of surpass everything that we were doing with Game Changer years ago. Like I want to see people just blow us out of the water here. Like I want to see 3D effects, real 3D effects. I just want to make it happen.
Generic question on this tech. What scripting language can people expect to be using for coding these objects?
Whatever you like. So right now we have Pathfinder working directly in C++ and C#. Those are the two languages that we've directly supported because those are the two languages we use the most internally. But the way Pathfinder works, and this is how it's going to remain, is you have a schema, which is all the data that's available to you, and it is effectively branch-like. So if you wanted to get chat messages, you would do live.stream.messages. And if you wanted to get the heart rate, you'd be like live.services.pulsoid.heartrate. If you wanted to get the alpha channel of the background, you'd do something like live.composite.game.background, and then you get the background texture. And it's just a string. So, and then you give it a container to put the data into once it's been fetched. This is a high performance API. It's something that you could call hundreds of times every frame if you really wanted to. Try not to, but you could. So yeah, we'll port it to whatever language people want it to be ported to. And we plan to open source the backbone of it as well. So it'll be easy for people to make their own things too. So like if you want to make a plugin that interacts with other plugins, you'll be able to do something like live.plugins.myplugin and then publish your own set of data underneath that name. And then other people can interact with you that way. So if they want to like adjust your settings or invoke a function inside your code, then they can do that. So you can imagine a Lua plugin interacting with a C++ plugin through this interface.
Nice. Brilliant. Very cool. Yeah, because I mean, I know there are a lot of people like myself that really kind of dipped their feet into game dev with worlds like Second Life. So that's going to be a fascinating feature to have. That's exciting.
Yeah, sometimes it's quite hard to talk about it because obviously like it's really just about putting all the data that we have onto this thing, and then it's up to you guys what you do with it. And I'm a big believer in making sure that if you're going to do something like that, you should provide enough structure that it is clear and understandable, but enough freedom that you're not getting in anybody's way. And I think we found like the balance here because we're using Pathfinder internally for our own use. Like we built this as a productivity tool for ourselves, and then we realized, oh shit, we can just like open it up. We can like give people access to it, and that's what we're gonna do.
I mean, that
Exciting.
even was the main reason for Steam Dev Days, if you remember, where game devs have been invited, and then Valve was talking about open up your games, make them moddable, so the community can take care of new content. And I think it worked out for many games. I mean, have a look at Beat Saber. Without the modding community, Beat Saber, I mean, yeah, okay, sound packs here and there, okay. But if the community cannot contribute to that, and there are people who are really eager into getting their creativity into that game because they're a big fan of it or a big fan of the technology, give them the chance to contribute, and they will do it. They will do it even for free.
It's so exciting, but there's a counterpoint that makes it so rough, and I think I brought this up the last time Rue was here, is the push for competitive VR play and leaving games open to what Rue and company are doing. I mean, effectively, if Anticheat comes along in VR, it's going to make their lives very, very miserable. And on the one hand, I want to see Anticheat because I want it to validate esports in VR. But on the other hand, I think this is a little bit more exciting, to be perfectly honest. I really do. Have you guys had conversations with anybody in the industry on that topic? Is this something that comes up?
Cheating specifically? Yeah, I mean, it's come up in, funnily enough, most of the developers that we've worked with haven't really expressed concern over it. The two games that we have talked to specifically about this are Population 1 and Veil. And our attitude towards this is that we will go out of our way to satisfy like the game devs, because without the game devs, there's no content. It's as simple as that. So for Population 1, we implemented a restriction that made it so that you can only use LIV's first-person camera with an avatar if you wanted to. That mostly worked out well. Some people got around that limitation.
Yeah,
I heard about that.
The primary reason for that limitation was not actually to prevent cheating. It was that the Population 1 team were not necessarily totally happy with how LIV looked in third person. And the big reason for that is that even if you were using an avatar, there's no lower body locomotion yet. So when you were moving around, it's like your feet are grinding against the floor. It just doesn't look good.
Yeah. Onion and I literally, we literally took to wearing Kelly green tights on our lower halves while we were streaming Pop 1 to make it and it actually looked kind of cool like that. I was sad when they took it away.
Yeah, and truthfully, I'm a little bit sad about that too. But that was never driven by like a need to prevent cheating in the first place. Veil, we talked about cheating, and then they took the same stance that we did. So like the stance we've always taken is we're going to wait and see. We're going to see if cheating is a problem, and if cheating is a problem, we will solve the problem. Rather than being proactive and implementing a bunch of restrictions and trying to like provide structure around these things ahead of time, we will just work with game developers to figure this out. VR is still really new. LIV is kind of a necessary tool in a lot of cases, because without it, you can't really do. It's just hard to stream VR games, and that in and of itself is a problem. Because if it's, I'm not going to get into that, but. So that's why our attitude is like, first, let's have the problem, then let's fix the problem. We've come up with a couple of ideas on how we might do that. And Veil agreed with us. They were like, people could cheat with this. Like they could set up an avatar camera in Veil, have somebody sat next to them with an Xbox controller, looking at the screen and like fly around a drone cam and like look around corners and check to see if there are people there.
Oh, you tell people how it works.
No. Well, here's the thing, right? I want people to do this stuff because then we get to fix it.
Right. That's the right attitude.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Like I want people to do these things.
Security by obscurity doesn't really work.
No. First we've got to find the problems. And so like one of our ideas for this is that we would have the idea of business settings. If a game wants to protect against certain like user behaviors or certain camera types, then in their SDK, they can like mark their game as having business settings. And then when you capture that game with LIV, it'll do a quick call home to check to see what those restrictions are and then apply them. That's one way that we can get around this. So one of those restrictions might simply be no in-VR viewfinder allowed. And that would
Okay,
get
so
around a lot of the problems.
what if I get fancy and start modifying these flags in real time in memory to try
That's
and make the
where
composite?
LIV starts to get its own anti-cheat.
Oh no!
Right?
Don't use easy anti-cheat.
Well, okay. I actually want to jump back a little bit because we talked a little bit about oh, I have a wasp in my room.
Oh Lord.
One sec.
Kill it with fire.
I'm gonna open a window. Sorry about this.
No
No
worries.
problem. You be safe.
Oh god, I hate wasps. 1 second. I'm gonna try and catch that guy. Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, good.
Oh dear me.
Totally okay. Hi, kitty. We see Rue's kitty. Rue cat.
All right, where are you?
This is a common enough problem for him that he has a net, folks.
All right.
Save the
What do I
wasps.
get?
Save the wasps.
Got my little insect catcher. I have to thank Alice for that later. That's hers. Whew. Sorry, refresh my memory. Where was I?
We
were talking about-
easy
I got
anti-cheat.
it. Yeah, so
Not easy
funnily
anti-cheat.
enough,
Just
one of the
anti-cheat.
things with Pathfinder is that, yeah, sure, we want to blow games wide open and we want to make people do stuff. But with the way LIV works, if you have the LIV SDK in your game, then that's effectively whitelisted by things like AZ Anti-Cheat. So if you want to publish, if you as a developer want to publish like specific game information, kind of like how Valve's game state API works with CSGO, like you want to expose current kills, current ammo, magazine, all of this, you can still do that, and people can like make plugins with LIV, and you won't get got by the anti-cheat. So like our attitude is just make it possible, and if it becomes a problem, then apply the limitations.
Yeah, sounds good.
Very
Sounds good.
sane approach. I like that.
It's also truthfully the least amount of work for us because we only have to do something when it happens.
That's
And
perfectly
with
fair.
everything I've talked about, you can imagine how big LIV's scope is right now. And we're a small team, so staying focused and like not getting stuck with too many choices is hard.
Let me use the anti-cheat and easy anti-cheat thing as a segue, because for Linux now, easy anti-cheat has been made available, and that's why some games have been working on the Steam Deck, because the Steam Deck appears to be very successful, and game devs are now taking care that their games do work on the deck. The deck is Linux-driven. So, do you have a deck at LIV? I know Eberit has, but does LIV have a Steam Deck and is tinkering with it?
Eba is the only person at LIV with a Steam Deck.
Oh, okay.
I am very jealous personally, but I don't have the cash to splash on that right now.
Okay.
I think it's really, really interesting, but we're not tinkering with it. And for what it's worth, we also know nothing about any new VR efforts that Valve is getting up to. I'm just gonna say that right now. We have no idea.
This is typical Gabe Newell, right? Nobody knows anything until there is actually a thing. But man, does he love teasing people like Tyler McVicker. It cracks me up.
You mean passionate gamer? Just as a side note, yes, he loves teasing people like that, and also that is one of the most undermining comments I think I've ever heard come out of a company. He's been Valve's dedicated journalist for the better part of a decade, and to call him a passionate gamer is just a little sad.
That is kind of. I mean, I remember when the Half-Life Alyx announcement hit, and this guy literally broke down in tears because he had been chasing this dragon for like how long? More than half a decade.
Maybe I missed that comment. What about the passionate gamer? What was that about?
Oh,
I think I missed that.
At one I can't remember the exact details, but at one point there was a comment in an article talking about Tyler McVicker, and it was a Valve employee, and they called him a passionate gamer when he, at this point, had been calling himself a journalist for Valve. And ever since then, he has kind of stuck to that label.
Passionate gamer.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was kind of a sidelong shot they took at him. They were basically saying, don't trust everything you hear from passionate gamers, you know, and it was, oh, yeah. I felt kind of bad for him. I mean,
he does amazing work.
He does, but it's definitely that obsessive data miner thing, if you guys aren't familiar with him. So it's, you know, not a very high hit percentage on what's going on, but he comes out with some interesting stuff. He does. And speaking of those passionate data miners, sadly, it's Bradley. I feel like is like right there on the bleeding edge of that personality type when it comes to VR. And some of the videos he's been releasing recently have been absolutely fascinating. But anyway, let's get back to LIV.
Well,
you
not to spoil any news there, but sadly, it's Bradley might be joining us shortly.
Oh,
by shortly I mean tomorrow.
Oh,
wow! Like professionally, full time?
I believe so. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so
definitely
happy for him.
I'm definitely stealing thunder there for sure because I don't think he's announced it anywhere. So like,
okay, all right,
you heard it here first.
No tweeting this out, guys. That I'm happy for him. That is good news. Like,
he's a great guy.
I remember when he put out his video being kind of down on his content creation and being uncertain about his future career. So that is way cool. So speaking of jobs at LIV, that's probably a good segue. Rue, you mentioned earlier.
Right. I just wanted to use that segue as well.
Yes. Obviously, like, you know, I've just talked about a bunch of really exciting things. I haven't even scratched the surface on some of it. Like, for example, we're going to be diving deep into our avatar functionality this year. We have a lot planned. And the new compositor is like a gigantic piece of scope because we're effectively porting everything that we have and making it better at the same time and then adding new stuff on top. That's going to take an incredibly long time. And we need help. Like we are currently 13 people. We're going to be 15 next week. And we have some very specific needs. So right now, what we really need help with is Unity development. We have 2 specific roles, and then we are just on the lookout for talented Unity developers. The 2 specific roles. 1, we need an avatar tools and formats developer. So this is somebody that is very, very comfortable with things like Blender and writing plugins. Anybody who's worked on file formats before, anybody who's worked in Unity and understands the insides and outs of VRM and similar avatar formats. We want to talk to you. Because we want to build a bunch of different plugins and make exporting an avatar from Blender directly to Unity possible. That's on the list. We need that. It's a huge hole in avatar creation right now. The other one is that we need a specialist IK developer, an IK/animation developer. One of the things that we talked about earlier was in population 1, even if you're using an avatar, the legs don't animate. That's a big problem. We need to fix that. If we're ever going to see LIV used in competitive shooters properly, that is a problem that needs fixing. So we need help with that. And then just overall Unity development. Our new compositor is going to be Unity based. And so we need help building our UI and building all of the rendering tech that goes into making that happen. We need more people. That's where I'll leave it for now, but you can check our careers on our website, liv.tv. There's a big hiring thing with a green dot next to it. Click that. Come to get to know us. We're cool people, I promise.
So liv.tv, check out their website. /careers. Let's post that.
Got it right here.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Let's post that in chat. So click on the link and check out if that is appealing to you. And reach out to LIV or Rue, maybe directly even. If you have any questions, if you need more details, what this is all about. But that's really amazing what I've heard. If I wouldn't have a full-time job already, I mean, I'm interested so much in Blender. I've used it a little bit. I'm not a Unity developer, but hey, you learn things every day, new things.
And that's something that I also want to be upfront about. Like, we're not necessarily looking for people who have like absolutely everything figured out. We're looking for people who have a drive to learn and a keen interest in this. If you know VR natively, but you're lacking in some other areas, come talk to us anyway. There's a good chance that we'll find a home for you. We've done a lot of hiring and figured out a few things already on like the management side. But developers are really where we need help right now.
These are some exciting roles too. Right. Like the way he describes this stuff, the way Rue is describing this is, we're talking about big sweeping changes in the way we go about our day-to-day activities in mixed reality. So if you guys think there's even a chance that you'd be interested in this, go ahead and apply. Seriously, like passion. Let's get it in this field.
Yeah, we're not doing the startup thing of exploding and having lots and lots of people. We don't want to fall into that trap. And honestly, I don't think Doom and I could take it. We're trying to grow slowly over time and just
healthy growth is needed.
Yeah. We're good for the next several years because of our successful fundraise recently. But I won't get to that because I'm not the business.
Yeah, I wanted to ask. Last time we've talked about that, it was venture capital that was funding LIV. Was that correct?
It's still venture capital now.
Okay. And I was interested in how the future will shape, because maybe that has changed since the last time we talked.
I can't speak for our next raise because that's probably minimum 3 years away. So I have no clue, transparently. But venture capital is where we're at right now. We still have to figure out monetization at some point, and there are some things that we're talking about, which I won't talk about here, just because they're so like uncertain and uncommitted to, that we're likely going to change our minds, like we have many times before. But we would probably like to break away from it at some point. But I also think it's the most feasible road forward for us. We've done a lot of modeling around like having LIV be paid and like having a pro tier with like extra features and things like that. And it just doesn't, the numbers don't make sense. We can't support the team that we have with that money effectively. It makes it very tough. If LIV were a 1, 2, 3 man project where it's just a few developers working on this together, it might be feasible. But we are a team of like designers, support, community, and we've got a bunch of different engineers all working on different facets of this problem. We're trying to do it in a way that's like really stable and like a concrete thing that people can invest into themselves. It just changes the scales. I appreciate that's not a great answer, but it's how we chose to build the company. So that's why we're here.
That's fine. Sounds good.
It's understandable and respectable. I really appreciate that you guys were wise about not taking too much funding, and you're taking your time with it going forward. Too many companies have collapsed under their own weight when they got greedy and took everything that people offered them. And wise moves, gentlemen, wise.
It can go sideways pretty quick if you don't take care. So we've talked about the first one, maybe 2 flexes from LIV, and you have put out a slight view in the future what's coming. But the next flex, what is it?
And the next flex, I think the next big flex is our new compositor. It is going to be the ability to have like an actually 3D environment in which to composite everything. So like one of the limitations that LIV has right now is that if you're using a physical camera, like I am right now, you can't move the virtual camera away from it. They are locked together by design, because you have a physical camera. If you want to move the physical camera, you've got to use a tracker. So flex number 2 is the ability to detach those things. So let's say you're playing pistol. Yeah, I can see him. I can see you getting excited. So let's say you're playing pistol whip and you want to have the camera like pan up to where you're aiming, or like look over to the side. You're going to be able to do that, and you'll be able to do that with mixed reality without needing to have a gigantic studio.
How?
Bro.
How?
I want to point out to anybody who hasn't been into this that long, this is one of those things that people just assumed was possible with the compositor, and led to like No, like endless troubleshooting issues in the Discord because people would come in and be like, "Why can't I do this? It keeps on messing it up."
So how? I mean, from our perspective, we kind of see it as this very unremarkable thing, but it is just like, okay, for example, if you
I
look up
have
any
a
virtual
rough idea
production
how it could
techniques, yeah.
work. And
If you
my
look up any
idea,
virtual production techniques, the idea, yeah, no, sorry, you guess. I will not explain.
yeah,
it to
let me
you.
guess. My guess is, I mean, we have seen that on several mixed reality streams, or for example in Beat Saber with the spin mod, I think it was, where you had the impression suddenly that the camera was moving around you. And which it wasn't. You just were able to see that because the person was doing little steps on the floor, turning around. So how this could work, in my imagination, is that the virtual world spins slowly, but the camera has to stick on the space where it is without using a tracker. So I could imagine that it's something like that.
No.
No. Good.
It is not that. But I'll come back to that because that is an interesting thread. But no, it's actually a lot simpler than that. If you look up any virtual production technique videos, tutorials that you see in Blender, the industry standard technique for doing this is that you put your camera footage onto a quad in your 3D scene, you key it out so it's got a nice transparent background, and then you just move the camera.
Yeah.
Why haven't we done that? Well, we haven't done that because our current compositor was built with the idea of it being mixed reality being a strict set of layers. There's no 3D
you're giving us layers.
Well, so like the whole new idea is that right now, if you think of the compositor output, you can think of it as literally a camera looking down at a desk where there's 3 layers of paper, right? And they're just layered on top of each other, and you take that. So if you want to move that camera, you're just looking at a flat thing on the desk. Whereas what we're moving towards is having all of those layers actually be located in space. So if you want to grab that camera and move it around, the layer is still there. It's just being distorted as if it were flat. So there's a certain amount of camera motion you can get away with before you start seeing the calibration drift away from the actual camera.
Okay, so, but if you were to do it too much to the side, you would see that the person is not shown from the side.
Yeah, if my camera was here and I was standing here and then I moved the virtual camera to be 90 degrees, I would disappear.
Yeah,
like that is one of the limitations. It's going to be hard for us to get around that, truthfully. We might, but that's like years ahead.
Right.
We can
but
talk
this is one of these things. I know, right? In all seriousness, that's quite likely that we'll end up exploring with stuff like that, because at least in my head, once you give people the ability to have a dynamic moving camera with a fixed physical camera, all sorts of questions start coming up and all sorts of requests start coming up.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we want to do those things.
What I could imagine is that if many streamers do have more than one physical camera, and you put up like at certain angles, one in the middle, one at 90 degree, at the other 90 degree, and then you like interpolate between those two and make something like that's good enough for viewing.
Seeing the grin on Rue's face, and based on the conversation we had about that compositors earlier, they've already experimented with this.
Well, yeah, we actually literally have. Well, even like taking it further, because I talked about this being a 2D plane, right? We've even experimented with distorting the plane to match your tracked controllers. So like you can imagine like an origami style thing where you have like a split down the middle of the body, and then you have like a right side for your right hand and a left side for your left hand. We've played around with that. But the thing I'm grinning about here specifically is like the idea of switching between these cameras readily, or even being able to do things like invoke a camera transition between 2 cameras, and then like halfway between it actually does the real cut. So it's kind of masked. That is something that will be coming with the new compositor as well. The ability to keep cameras active, even if they're not currently being composited, so that the switch between them is instantaneous, as opposed to coming with a huge hitch and a judder.
Right, waiting for the webcam to come online. Yeah, like for my camera switches, I'm literally using a smoke explosion to cover up the fact that you can't see me for a second there. So are you guys have you experimented with stitching the compositors together? Or are you just looking for a more seamless transition between them? Like I'm thinking, when you're spanning an image across multiple monitors, right? Is that something that's possible?
I'm actually having trouble visualizing that. Sounds interesting. Could
I mean,
you?
I guess it's basically the same idea as your seamless transition between the cameras.
Yeah,
But I'm
effectively.
imagining you literally being able to take those two side by side compositors and sliding them together and cropping them so that you've just kind of got one larger compositor.
Oh, I see. That's a really interesting idea. Not something that I had thought about, but it would be readily doable in our new compositor. And this is the primary reason why we're actually moving away from our old one, is that experimenting with stuff like this is extremely hard in our old code base. It takes us a long time. It has no understanding of three-dimensional space at all. So any of what you've just talked about is just off the table. Like, it would be a lot of work to build that. But when it's all inside our Unity-based compositor, well, we just add another camera source and put it in a physical location, and boom, it's
Right.
done. Like, it's so much simpler to do it that way, and it's the kind of thing that I would expect plugins to be able to do too. That's really where we were, like, late game, where we're going towards here. Like, I've always seen Live as this very easy way to get into the techniques used for virtual production, and there's no reason why not, with a little bit of spit and polish, you can't get really like high end results out of this thing, and do it real time, which is obviously like the really big benefit. Because if you're doing it all in Blender or C4D or whatever, you're doing it in post. Here we can do it in real time, and there's no reason why we can't use like traditional blending techniques and traditional game rendering techniques to get it looking really good.
That's
Y-
awesome.
You mentioned this is all more or less done in Unity. I mean, we know there are also other VR capable engines like Unreal. Will that also be included at some point? Is it technically more difficult to do it? What's the difference, and why is the focus on? I mean, I know from what I've seen from the games I'm playing, mostly of them which are doing VR are also Unity or using Unity. There are maybe one or two that do not use Unity but Unreal.
Well, so I'm talking about Unity here, but I'm only talking about the compositor component of Live. So as inputs into that compositor, it can be an Unreal game, or it can be a Unity game, or it can be a
Ah, I
completely
see.
custom engine.
Yeah.
And I think that's like that's the distinction, right? So we could have an Unreal Engine compositor. In fact, actually, one of our developers is kind of teasing that apart, because he wants to see metahuman avatars used with Live, which I think would be really
Nice.
cool.
Hmm.
And the future that we're moving towards with Pathfinder would allow us, in theory, to swap in and out a rendering engine and like replace it. We're not directly aiming for that, because for us, Unity is a more accessible engine. It's much easier for us to turn off features that we don't want, or implement features that we want to use in the way that we want to use them. Unreal, for all of its benefits, is it's very structured in its approach, and there is a specific way to do everything in Unreal, which for us, being kind of this mix between a, a game technically and a rendering tool and a productivity tool, often means that we have to do things that are a little bit against the grain of what would be typically done in a game engine. So Unity gives us a bit more flexibility there. That
Oh, okay.
also with it's easier to find C# developers than it is C++ and Blueprint.
Yeah, okay. Because I thought that Unity is more kind of the black box kind of engine, while Unreal is the open source engine. I mean, it's not open source. Well, it is open source even, but you get the source code, and if you have problems, you can fix it in the engine yourself. While in Unity, it has to be fixed by the Unity developers. So I thought the more open engine would be Unreal. But if you say it's more approachable for you to, because of C# and stuff, to use Unity, I can understand that.
It's column A and column B. I mean, you're completely right. Modifying Unreal Engine source code is like, a lot of game developers will do that.
Yeah.
But think when you start considering that as like the future base upon which you'll build everything, you have to ask yourself the question: how often are you going to do that, and how much are you going to change it? Because if you change it a whole bunch, whenever there's an engine upgrade, if you want to move up, you either have to make sure those things are still compatible and do all the porting work, or you have to have those things be accepted as pull requests. And that could be challenging with Unreal, especially if these things have nothing to do with games and it's just stuff for us. With Unity, because of its nature is this like kind of, we'll provide you rendering, we'll provide you physics, we'll provide you lighting, but we will provide basically nothing else. The building blocks are just that much more generic that it allows us to do things our way from the start. That doesn't mean that Unity is perfect. There are things about it that are quite frustrating and annoying. Especially the debug and development workflow can be quite frustrating at times, and the asset pipeline is annoying. All in all, it is a lot easier to do something in a light manner than it would be in Unreal. So it's
I understand.
It's kind of hard to sum it up.
I've seen that with the development, for example, of Everspace, which is one of my most favorite space games. That's done in Unreal. And I remember back then when they wanted to do the Linux port, they were struggling with the renderer. There was a bug in the renderer on Linux, and Epic didn't fix it. So, I mean, for Unity, also, you are not able to fix it probably if there is an issue. But I think they have a whole team dedicated to those kind of issues, and even for the multi-platform stuff. While on Unreal, it might change now because of the Steam Deck or so. But back then, it was really normally the game developer should not have to take care of those issues. They should be fixed by the engine developer, and they had to fix it themselves. I mean, they could fix it because they had the source code. But on the other hand, like you said, it's not something you as a game developer want to deal with to fix the bugs that should have been not in the engine at all. Yeah.
And especially, like, I think also LIV has a unique history of being a little burned by Unreal. For example, the early days of us trying to implement mixed reality support in Unreal were very difficult because the Steam VR plugin was implemented very weirdly. It was very atypical from how it was done in Unity. And so like there were just coordinate differences, like literally Oculus headsets running Steam VR in Unreal Engine up until recently had a very slightly different scale applied to them that was just irritating. That also like extra trackers that you might want to use to track a camera, they were only exposed to a very specific interface. It was just a bit confusing. But then on top of that, we've been facing this challenge recently of getting accurate rendering outside of our LIV Unreal plugin. So like if you as a game developer integrate the plugin, you want your game to look the same as it does in the headset. But Unreal has this thing called eye adaptation, where it basically will multiply colors based on how bright the scene is. It kind of simulates the like HDR effect that you get when you walk out of a dark environment into a light one. But that eye adaptation is what dictates the color output of the headset, and your LIV camera is completely detached from that. So suddenly you've got two different values being used, and so you've got this mismatch. And we've actually had to very slightly modify the engine so that we can extract the eye adaptation out of the headset and apply it to our camera. And we've actually submitted a pull request to Unreal so that we can do that. Because without that, it is impossible to get a one-to-one faithful representation of what's happening inside the headset. So those are some of the like two examples of where we've been kind of like, this is going to take us a really long time to fix because we just have to wait until it's integrated into the engine.
Yeah. Oh dear. I see. Yeah. Interesting details for sure.
Oh,
that's interesting. So I'm not going to name names, but I feel like that kind of explains what we're seeing with the LIV implementation on some of these games out there. Because there are some Unreal Engine games that have LIV running that it runs, but it's got some interesting issues that make it not so tasty to watch. So speaking of LIV compatible games, I saw you guys were promoting Vermilion in their LIV support earlier this month. Are there other LIV supported titles that you'd like to talk about?
Ooh, that's a good question. I am actually a little bit removed from our latest integration, so I don't have the latest news for you. That said, I'm going to answer a slightly different question, which is you can expect to see LIV integrations for games that are very popular but otherwise have not integrated LIV coming fairly soon. In fact, one of our recent hires is a guy called Rai, who worked on the Outer Wilds VR port. He has joined our team, and he is going to be making first-party LIV mods for popular games. So you'll see a LIV SDK integration for Gorilla Tag via a mod before too long. So that's one of the games that we have planned.
There is a VR mod in the works for GTFO. GTFO is also a Unity game.
I'm going to take a moment here to just people need to acknowledge the fact that Beat Saber has fostered the world's healthiest relationship between modding and Unity. It's literally changed the landscape. Beat Saber is solely responsible for accelerating the development of Unity mods because BepInX, which is the modding framework that people are now using to mod Unity games outside of Beat Saber, is next level usable. We're talking 0 to mod working in half an hour in a game that nobody's ever modded before. It's nuts.
Really? I need to get into that. I think Beat Saber Pistol Whip can be modded with BepInX. GTFO is using the BepInX mod tool. Okay.
That Gorn volcap that I showed was done with BepInX. But there are obviously limitations. If the game is using IL to C++, it gets a little bit more complicated. But there are tools being made for that too. And then there's also somebody is working on a similar tool for Unreal games. Modding games is it was already nuts with Unity, but once Unreal is figured out, we're talking about a new generation of mods.
It's interesting though. I mean, we have seen recently more approaches away from PC. So things like Stadia came up, or GeForce Now, or the Xbox Game Pass premium thing, PlayStation Now, I think it's called. Those are all services where you don't have the game running on your local computer anymore. And there, it's impossible to install mods, at least community-made mods. I mean, if they do something, because if you remember back in the days, you had those trainers for your games, which are little hacks where you were modding the memory and then you got more money, unlimited lives, your weapon does more damage, whatever. And then they came up with the idea, hey, we can sell those as DLCs. And then they were adding that as DLC. And maybe
that was
yeah.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
And maybe I don't know if it will be something. Maybe it will be possible that the mod support will be monetized, so you will have to create DLCs for them to have those on those platforms that are not a PC.
Well,
don't put that into the universe.
Well,
that's
no,
Roblox,
I mean, it's not possible to stream VR. We know streaming VR will probably not be possible for another, I don't know, decade or so.
I don't know about that.
Okay,
I've seen people use LIV with a Shadow PC. Play Beat Saber, get good gameplay, and records with LIV with a virtual cloud PC.
Oh my friggin' God!
2 years ago.
What the hell?
That was 2 years ago.
That's impressive.
Because I remember we were talking about this the first time, and we were like, yeah, streaming VR, because of the latency, it will probably be an issue. And now you tell me it happened already.
You've got me curious now, Rue, to be perfectly honest, because I have the bandwidth to support that scenario.
I have as well.
I can only talk about that one specific example, and I'm pretty sure the person was close to the data center. It was in France. I forget which service it was specifically. And I actually haven't seen many people try it since. We've had a couple of bug reports from people with Shadow PCs, but I'm not backpedaling. But what I am saying is it is possible.
Okay.
As to whether or not it's an experience that I would recommend for people, I don't think so yet. And I think it will take years before we get there. What was it I was going to say about... about modding for games that are off PC. mod.io or mods.io. What is it? Mod.io. There is already a platform / like solution for effectively a game developer whitelisting mods that a community has made and then allowing them to be deployed to traditionally closed platforms like Nintendo Switch, for example.
Okay.
This is, as to whether or not this, like, I know that this is one of these topics that it can either be received well or it can be received poorly. And I've been watching these guys for a little while and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if this is ever going to take off. I don't know if game developers will go for it. I don't know if publishers will go for it. I don't know if console manufacturers will go for it. But if the world has come to realize that modding content is what keeps a game alive, and it's cheap to do so, frankly, it is very cheap.
Yeah. As you mentioned
then
before.
I can only imagine that this is something that's going to get more and more popular, and it will be a good way to get us away from the trappings of UGC platforms like Roblox.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and I think modding was only half of what happened with the Beat Saber momentum, man. Like what happened with Beat Saber, we just haven't seen happen again in VR, and that really bothers me. They had such a fundamentally perfect game with, you know, basic and primitive, but this is a concept that everybody dreams of. Oh my God, I want to swing a lightsaber, you know? And it was just so raw and so simple that it worked. And we need more of that in VR. But what other concepts can you bring forward with such a primitive method and it still be engaging, right? And that, I don't know. I keep on thinking about that. Where is VR game development going to go that we can engage a user on that level again? Because there are games like Boneworks and stuff like that that the VR hardcore really enjoy, but that's not something you can throw a casual into or a newbie into the way you can Beat Saber. It's intuitive. You pick it up and go. Like the craziest thing I've seen happen is somebody reads the arrows as pointing the opposite way, and I can kind of get that. But
yeah,
it's
or
literally
the dot
pick it
in
up
the
and
middle,
go.
where you think you have to stab it instead of slicing it any direction.
Which I'm okay with. Stab the dot.
Yeah, I mean that's an error you make only once or twice, then you get either told it. Yeah, as Thin Striders is mentioned, of course, but yeah, those rhythm games. I think every new rhythm game that's coming out is only reusing mechanics that have been already shown. So following trails or slashing or shooting. I mean, we kind of have seen everything already, and the new games we see are not really. There might be some, but not fundamentally new. I mean, what the games we've seen that are coming like Against or so, those are a mixture. They're a mixture out of swinging a saber and shooting a gun. So which games did they take their inspiration of? I think it's not hard to guess.
Well, yeah, and that's just it, right? It's the fundamentals of the controls that we have right now, I think, is the big thing that's guiding game development right now. And this has come up to me a few times. We as gamers take for granted that our VR controllers are effectively a gamepad with some motion controllers attached to them, you know? And getting into gaming and moving around with analog sticks is not at all intuitive. Everybody remembers the first time they sat down and tried to play an FPS with a gamepad. You know, it's...
It works pretty well for games where you are in a cockpit because you have some surrounding and that's kind of natural to you. You are maybe even sitting. Because if you're sitting, the world is moving around you. When you are standing with room scale experiences like those games are, you have to not move with your legs, and that is weird. Yeah. For cockpit games, simulation games, it works well, but for the others,
Well, and that's just it. Go ahead, Rick. Sorry.
I always found the I made a couple of comparisons in other conversations I've had recently to how when the Vive first came out, the big like back and forth that the VR community was having was like, Oculus can't do room scale, you know, and room scale was the hot thing. Everybody was like, oh, holy shit, you can walk across the room and interact with an object. dude, that's nuts. And you saw all kinds of like interesting and unique prototypes where those mechanics were explicitly explored and played with. But then you look at the VR landscape today, and actually you don't see it used much. Most games, other than like puzzlers and things that are made specifically for room scale, which are by far and away not that popular, use joystick locomotion or it's entirely still. And I
Yep.
think the reason for that is that people are figuring out which patterns are the most comfortable for everybody, and room scale isn't one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe the teleport works for people like me because I mean it changed a little bit, and that's why I was mentioning the GTFO VR mod, because that's the only one where I didn't get motion sick while using the analog sticks. Every other game, Boneworks, makes me motion sick pretty quick. After an hour, I have to stop playing.
What works is they warn you, right? We're expert level. Don't play this game if you don't have your VR legs, which is bad.
I have a hot take. I think that Boneworks' dedication to using physics for everything is admirable, but it has come with design problems that they have explained away by simply saying that you just need to get a stronger stomach. I don't think it was impossible for them to solve it. I think that they stopped just short of where they could have gone with it. And I would really love to see them solve them properly. And I want to shout out a specific game that I think a few people are probably aware of in this audience, that is probably never going to see the light of day, or at the very least, it's going to take a very long time. Tundra Fight School. Oh yeah, you guys should go check that developer out. He is an interesting character. He is making and has been before Boneworks was ever even announced, is making a fully physics-enabled like environment in which to build things. And recently he's been active again. He goes through periods of inactivity and activity. He's just one guy. And he is solving physics problems the way they are supposed to be solved, which is getting down and dirty with like PID control. For example, one of the most exciting things that he did recently is he made it so that when you're moving your hands around with your controllers on, your entire body is physics objects and joints that weigh the correct amount. So like your arm weighs the correct physical amount and everything and reacts correctly. But when you're moving your controllers, it's frame locked. So it doesn't feel like a physics hand until you pick up something heavy, and then it does. It like droops the way you'd expect it to. But that specific integration is something I have not seen in any other VR game. And that leads me to believe that we are going to enter a world where physics games can be comfortable for everybody because they are polished to such an extent. That is my little rant about physics. I think Boneworks stopped short of perfection, and that is a shame.
Yeah.
I was literally about I wasn't going to go on the tangent about it that you went on, but I completely agree. I feel like they use their warning as a crutch to preface the fact that, I mean, you guys remember, it wasn't even that long after the game came out that they were like, oh yeah, I guess our climbing physics are kind of jank, and they put out a fix for it because you all remember what was happening to a lot of people. You'd grab onto an object and all of a sudden you're going like this in the game world. And
yeah, I remember that a solution to that problem would have been the Tundra tracker, if you remember that one, where you can put it on your hip and then it will correctly detach the body below you from your headset. So if you are leaning forward, not your character in game is also moving forward, which is weird. Just your head is moving forward, and you can lean around edges and stuff. I don't know how far that came, and if that would have solved those issues like Boneworks has. But yeah, I think the proper simulation with the weight and whatever, if you get the proper simulation of the real world in VR, that will probably help as well a lot.
I just think that it will help. But I think that just points to how early we still are. Yes, Beat Saber was a runaway success. And no, we're not going to see anything like it for a really long time. And I think that's a healthy approach to take. Like Beat Saber was viral like Tetris was back in the day. Like most other people just didn't care about games, but they'd heard about Tetris. And like even now, when I'm introducing the job that I do to a complete random stranger who knows nothing about gaming, I still ask them if they saw that one viral video from a few years back where they were cutting cubes to music and it was Star Wars. That's literally how I explain it.
Yeah.
And then they go, oh yeah, I remember that. And then I'm like, yeah, I actually work in that industry. And then they're like, what? You know? But like my point is, one, we need to be more patient, and two, sure, there's a bunch of money being thrown around and there's a whole bunch of production value going into these things, but we are just scratching the surface of the usage patterns that people will get comfortable with. Yeah, using a gamepad with a joystick on it is uncomfortable, but like it's completely new. It's in the same way that it took people many, many years to get comfortable with the idea of using a joystick to look around in first-person shooters. It's going to take that long for people to get comfortable with the tropes of VR, but a lot of those tropes are going to be broken and yet to be established. So like we're early. We're still early.
Yeah, we're definitely at this point where they're going to get built up, torn down, and rebuilt again. I don't think these are, with how much is going on in hardware development, I don't think these are going to remain our paradigm that much longer. Like 5 to 10 years tops, and we're going to see something affordable that's just going to replace these things outright. And I have high hopes for the tactile feedback controllers and the gloves that actually have restrictions and everything, because I feel like a contextually sensitive virtual world with those kinds of interfaces is where we're going to be going for our interfaces. It just makes so much more sense than telling people to push buttons in their hands, you know?
I remember though back then when they were researching VR controls, and they said, yeah, we tried gloves, but people feel uncomfortable wearing gloves in VR because they can't touch the world. It's like detaching them from the world, and that's why they don't like to wear gloves for VR. And that's why they didn't do it. That's why they came up with the Vive Vans or the Knuckles now, which are quite the better VR controllers. But yeah, it needs something new, like you said, Crin. Yeah.
Well, like you said, they've tried gloves before, but the distinguishing difference now is the haptics that we've got. There's all sorts of interesting tactile feedback, haptic elements that make the experience realistic. Like the Tesla gloves and stuff like that have been showing up at CES for years now. It is an inspiring experience to be able to reach out and grab a sphere and feel like you're actually holding a sphere or holding a cube or something, you know? So we're getting there. We are. And you guys have probably seen, gosh, I can't even remember the name of the YouTube channel, but somebody has developed haptic gloves with that kind of resistance for like $60 a pair that you can attach a tracker to and get some darn near Johnny Mnemonic stuff going on, you know? So
actually Eber is building his own pair of those.
Really? I've been collecting parts to do my own as well. I'm kind of excited to play with them. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I mean, maybe it just needs something where people want to have it, want to do it. So I'm a PC gamer, so I'm playing shooters with a keyboard and mouse. I switched from a keyboard to a Move Master, which is a different kind of input, but I'm still playing with a mouse, aiming with a mouse. And I could never wrap my head around controlling a shooter with a gamepad. It's too slow, etc. It's not feeling good. Do you know what changed it? The Steam Deck. The Steam Deck does have gamepad controls. And now I'm starting to get comfortable. I'm starting to wrap my head around this kind of input. I want to do it because I like the Steam Deck so much. And now I'm playing some shooters with gamepad controls. And I think for VR,
I think that's the difference, isn't it? Like that's the thing that's pushed you over the edge, is now you have a reason to want to invest in feeling comfortable into this thing. So you're training. You're training your fingers and you're training the response. That's awesome.
Fair point. So speaking of gamepad controls and shooters, there's been an interesting paradigm shift happening in that realm ever since Splatoon came out. I don't know if you know what I'm going for here, Rue. Yeah. So Splatoon added something beautiful that it took years to catch on, but they integrated motion controls in with the standard FPS controllers, and this gave you a level of fine-tuning accuracy that just absolutely blew my mind the first time I sat down with it. And games like Fortnite are integrating this now. They recently updated their gamepad schemas to include a gyro aiming feature and a one-button 180, which is just so huge in making FPS gamers competitive with top-tier mouse and keyboard gaming. Those two features, to me, arguably, if somebody masters that, they can be right there with top mouse players. Like,
I mean,
there's almost no distinction now.
I mean, the Steam controller back then had gyro controls already integrated. People haven't been using the Steam controller much, though, because it is, or back then, it was too much to configure. And getting...
I think the reason it wasn't used was more the alienating experience of the lack of a joystick. I think that was a prime reason. Like the pads that I had a Steam controller. I liked it, but I never chose to use it because the lack of having a second joystick meant that most games I wanted to play with just didn't feel comfortable.
Okay, like, because
it was a great compromise controller.
From what I've heard is, I mean, we know that Valve has stopped producing the Steam controller, even though do you remember the manufacturer video that Valve has put out with the Aperture Science facility? That was so cool. It was so cool.
I love
and
that.
From what I've heard, I don't know who mentioned that, but somebody said, they wanted to do a Steam controller version 2. Which didn't happen. Instead, this thing happened. So here we have kind of the things again. We do have touchpads, like on the Steam controller, but we do have dual joysticks. So this is a Steam controller version 2, kind of. This is where they put their effort in. And I think that's why this will be less of an issue, where people are using the Steam Deck. It will be less likely to fail. I mean, it's a success already. Than the Steam controller was, because I can totally see what you're saying with missing the second analog stick, even though I'm still using this. This is my replacement for the Xbox controller still. But I can see where you're going.
I am a ardent supporter of the PS5 DualSense controller now, especially with games starting to get DualSense support. This thing is magic. Damn, I had a good segue here and I just spaced it.
That's a good segue to what?
Do we have anything? Yeah, do we have anything else on your list?
We talked about most of the things we wanted to talk. We have talked about the Flex.
A lot of ground.
We have talked about the next Flex that's coming. So a lot of stuff that we covered. Interesting.
If it's all right, I would like to talk about one thing that we have been putting a lot of work into recently that we haven't talked about at all.
Please.
LIV has a brand new first-person stabilizer. Have either of you played with it?
I have not.
Okay.
I can't.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. Well, maybe it would actually work for you. But anyway.
Tell me how.
Long story short, if a game doesn't have LIV support, or if you have a low-end PC, or you're playing a first-person shooter where LIV just doesn't really make sense, you can now run the first-person stabilizer tool from LIV, and it will automatically capture whichever SteamVR game you're currently playing. And what it does is it takes the game output along with the pose used to render that specific frame, and then it smooths it. It stabilizes it.
That's great, because I've been looking for something that is stabilizing a little bit the janky first-person view. I'm now using mostly the VR mirror view that Steam has, because the in-game output is mostly one eye, so you have a smaller field of view, a smaller part of the picture. But if you use the VR mirror view and use it for both eyes, even though it has this little segue. Where it's putting the two images together. You can see that. It's mostly not even noticeable. It depends if you have edges. If you have edges there, you can see, okay, it's separate when you're looking around. So I'm using something that's called XR desktop, which is bringing desktop Windows into the VR world on Linux. I think Windows SteamVR has that natively in the meantime. And when I have the chat window there and I'm looking around, then you can see that line. But otherwise, mostly you don't even see that. And it's more comfortable to view because it does have this higher field of view. Nevertheless, it is still a little bit janky because your head is moving all the time. Your brain can totally filter that out. But what you see on screen, and I mean, that shows how accurate our headsets are in the meantime. They realize every little jitter you do with your head. So tell me more about that smooth view.
So, I mean, it is what it says on the tin. Like, it takes that output from the game, just like the SteamVR mirror does, and it stabilizes it. And you can control how much stabilization to apply. You can choose whether or not to lock the roll axis too. So if you don't want it to tilt with you as you tilt your head, it can be completely horizon locked. And right now we don't have both eye support, but we are actually implementing it. It's the next thing that we're doing. But we also have a blurred background support. So if you've got one eye, you can enable this thing that will like blur the background and make it bigger so that it covers up this extra bit of like non-view that you get.
Yeah, that was that's the next question I have. I mean, if you are moving your head, what you get out of SteamVR, of the mirror view, is the tilted view. But if you are locking that, where do you get the information about the corners that you don't see because you have your head tilted?
Well, fortunately and unfortunately, I guess, is the texture that you get from a game that is rendering has something called a hidden area mesh. It is a GPU saving technique. Basically, anything that's not going to be visible through the lens is just not rendered. So on a Valve Index, for example, that hidden area mesh kind of looks like a crescent moon. A big fat crescent moon.
Yeah.
So when you tilt your head, you're kind of tilting this oval shape around. So like you're not really losing out on much. So even though, yes, there is not as much information there, but you're not losing much FOV at all. In fact, you lose the most FOV on smoothing it because obviously to smooth something, you're adding some kind of latency to it.
Yeah.
So if you whip your head around like crazy, it takes a sec to catch up. So that's where you'll usually see the differences, or you'll see like something that isn't actually in the headset. That's what the blur background thing is for, so that you can still like see something, even if it's not, more of the game. Though we are trying to work on that. So like I said, we're adding both eye support, but we're also looking into doing, and I don't know if you guys know this, but Oculus have actually had this game on lockdown for a really long time. So the Oculus Mirror tool has the capability of expanding the field of view that the game renders independently of your headset FOV. So let's say headset FOV is 90, you can actually tell the game to render 120, and then the headset still sees 90, but the output you see on the desktop is much wider. We are looking into doing that for SteamVR as well, because obviously that's next level shit for capturing first-person VR gameplay.
Especially the smooth camera. Then that would be so good. Tell me more if that is working for me already.
Yes, I actually kind of hope it works for you. It's not doing too much that's like special live source. But yeah, you'll have to give it a go and maybe bump that necro thread we have for Linux support if it doesn't work. Because Iba worked directly on this, so he'll be able to help us out.
Oh, cool.
I'm honestly hoping that the first person jitter issue is going to be solved going into the next generation of HMDs from the hardware level. Because like it's a physics problem, right? We're talking about these trackers being on a fulcrum way out.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
Oh, Crin.
Oh, that's unfortunate. That's an unfortunate frame to die on.
There you go. Welcome back.
What the hell just happened there? Can you guys hear me?
You had a freeze.
Yeah, you're back.
But no,
my
you're
Discord
back.
is having a heart attack.
It's all good. It didn't.
It's still going. All right.
Again.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, basically what I was saying is it's a physics problem, right? And we can fix this at the hardware level. We're talking about trackers being on a pivot, a fulcrum from at a distance from where you're actually making these movements. So it tracking so far away from your face is really amplifying and making those movements bounce. Like they can literally fix that at the hardware level with tracking.
I don't think so, actually.
You don't?
No, the jitter that you get, like baseline, comes like the position that the runtime will use to render the eyes is actually like the position of your physical eyes, right? So even though the tracking hardware, I think it's died again.
Maybe.
We'll see if he might need to give Discord a quick restart. But I will answer the question anyway, and then I'll give a summary for when he's back. The positions are where your eyes are anyway. So any jitter that you're seeing is what you would have seen anyway. Like if you don't perceive the jitter yourself, then there is no jitter as far as your head is concerned.
Yeah.
Any jitter that you see in the output is because we are biological, physical things, and we are imperfect. Our heads shake around, and our brains have put a lot of work into filtering that out. So we have to deal with the hand that we have.
Yeah. Yeah, that was what I was mentioning. I think if the headset would even smooth that out, then you would get motion sick because your brain is expecting that your head is moving. Your eyes are jittering all the time a little bit, and if
you can actually turn that on. Like Half-Life Alyx has this as an option. You can turn on full first-person smoothing in Half-Life Alyx, and it will smooth the headset position, because that's how they filmed their smooth trailer footage, is that they just filmed the tracking data used for the headset, and then they labeled it as this like thing that you can do if you really want to get high-quality footage. There's some documentation online for it. It's awful.
Yeah, I want to say, is that for the VR headset? Is that for the View? Oh my gosh, okay.
Yes.
No, I don't want to try that, I guess.
Yeah,
okay,
it's,
but yeah, I need to figure that out and talk maybe to Ivarit. But that sounds really cool, and it was something I was looking into. I was even Googling for like OBS plugins that can smooth out any jitter view or so. Couldn't really find something. There has been something, but yeah, I gave up on it. But when LIV does have that now, I want to use it.
The other cute little thing about it, before I end it, and this like thread, is compared to this Steam VR view, it has an unlocked frame rate, so it runs at the same refresh rate as the headset. So if you have a PC capable of it, you can say run your headset 120, record 120 FPS footage, and then you can resample that down to 60 or 30 and get silky smooth results. But it was
awesome.
like really lovely results.
Awesome.
So yeah, give it a shot. We have a lot of improvements coming to it, but I'm really proud of the work that we've done there, because it's so much better than our first attempt at that smoothing tool. It's very compatible. Works in everything except games that have an easy anti-cheat.
Oh, needs to get whitelisted, huh?
We may talk to them about that. We'll see.
Cool. Yeah, right on. I think Crin is having technical issues, but I think also
I'm here. I just don't.
Oh, okay. But I also think we have talked about the things we wanted to talk about. I think the time is also a good one to call it for today. Yeah. Thank you so much, Ru. That was interesting again to talk about. And I think we'll have a catch-up chat in the near future as well again. Because there's always new things that LIV is flexing about. And that you can talk about. And yeah, that was an interesting talk. Thank you so much for that.
No, thank you so much. It was a pleasure being on.
We appreciate it, Ru. Always interesting to talk to you. Looking forward to watching the VOD.
As soon as we have, before I disappear, as soon as we have news to share about Pathfinder coming out, I'll be coming to you guys to organize another show, because I think this audience in particular is very interested in that.
Yes,
so
that's true.
I'll come here to signal boost it.
Awesome. Right on. So yeah,
Very
that has
exciting.
it been. That has it been for the season 3, episode 3. Nerding out with Ru. So thanks, crindash, for co-hosting. Thank you, Ru, for joining us. You can find Ru on twitch.tv/RuiRise. That's RUYZI.
RUIRIZE.
Right. And the same handle on Twitter. So check him out. He is playing Beat Saber and you can see that from his trained buddy. He's playing Beat Saber in his own developed Claw mode. And Claw is like playing how's he called? From the X-Men, Wolverine. It's like playing Wolverine in Beat Saber. It's a much more taxing workout because your sabers are smaller and you have to reach out more and move more. So there you can see, if you want to have a buddy like this, play Beat Saber with the claw mode. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. See you all on the next cast. Have a good one, everybody, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.